Hari Om. Chapter 12. Bhagwan is refusing to lose hope on a devotee like Arjun, and he says, no, don't worry. If there are ways that you cannot reach me, I will provide you more and more ways of stilling the mind. Basically, it is all because of the mischief of the mind. To still the mind, I will offer you more and more methods, and sincerely, if you follow one or all the paths, one or any of the paths, I do promise you that you are going to cross the Mrityu Sansara Sagarat. I, Samuddharta, I am going to help you and be your savior. This is the big promise of Bhagwan in chapter 12. And what are these methods? So, in the very first instance, we saw that to focus our mind on something, the very first thing we need is the Uddeshya. Uddeshya meaning, do we even have our goal as Bhagwan, as ultimate truth, as Param Shanti? As Jnani would say, I want Param Shanti. And a Bhakta would say, God, I just want you. So, whichever way we look at it, that Uddeshya has to be constant and steady and consistent. Without that Uddeshya, we can't even hope to start out on the journey, leave alone choose a path. How can you choose a highway or a path when the goal is not clear? So, once the goal is clear, yes, I want to know the infinite truth. I know that I am not just this finite little body with finite little pleasures and family and relationships which last a few decades and then I'm gone. That is what Nachiket wanted to know in Kathopanishad when he faced Yamraj. And Yamraj said, I'll grant you 3 boons, and one of them was that your family will be protected down on earth, because Nachiket had already reached Yamlok. So your family is going to be protected, and yes, you're going to find ways and means of achieving all kinds of pleasures and apsaras and chariots and wealth and putra and pautra and live as long as you like. So you will have a long life, no infinite life. Nachiket just stood his ground in Kathopanishad and he said, no, I have no use for these things for 2 reasons. One is because they are temporary. So Yamraj, even if you give me these things, they are temporary. And secondly, if I indulge in any of the pleasures that you are offering me, I will only deplete my energy in engaging in them. I need my spiritual energy. I refuse to deplete my energy. A young boy, Nachiket, had this kind of vivek. Not only vivek, from this vivek comes great vairagya. The moment you have this discrimination which he had, that oh, these are temporary and they are only depleting my energy, so I don't want it. The moment we have that vivek, the automatic corollary is vairagya, because then you actually feel completely detached from something that was never yours, from something that is so fragile and temporary. Why would you want to engage in it? You know, it's like a child who is so fascinated by soap bubbles, and you should see the delight. And sometimes when the soap bubbles, the soap bubble water is over in the container, you should see the dismay and the disorientation in which the child finds himself, completely dismayed and distraught. Why? I want more soap bubbles. Okay, so when an adult is watching him, does the adult also get carried away by that dismay and sorrow of the child because the soap bubble water was over? No, because the adult knows, उनके पास इतनी तो विवेक शक्ति है ना adult के पास कि अरे ये तो temporary था, ये तो यूं ही था और खत्म तो होना ही था. Who knows that? The adult knows it. The child doesn't know it, and therefore he cries and he feels sorrow. In the same way, a Muni mind, a mind which is matured spiritually, is also watching all the work, all the pleasure seeking that we are doing in the world, and feeling the same kinds of delight and fascination and sorrow when they are over, and crying and bawling and the mind of the rishi or the muni or let's say a simple ordinary mind, but with the vivek and vairagya, having studied the scriptures, we are supposed to get vivek and vairagya, can also watch the same people like as if they are children who are feeling delight and sorrow at playing with soap bubbles. So just as the mind of the rishi can see how silly we are, just as the adult can see how silly the children are in their sorrow, I do feel that this kind of indulgence in the world, at some point we all look for a way out. What is the way out of this sansar? When there is no answer which can come from sansar has no answers for it. So that's when the seeker starts looking in the scriptures, if he is a jnani, or in Bhagwan Bhakti, if he is a bhakta, and in dhyan, if he is able to meditate, and maybe as a karma yogi to get away from this seeking in the world, from a mind which is always engaged with I, ये सब मेरे लिए है और मेरा है, उससे बाहर निकलने के लिए सिर्फ एक तरीका है कर्म योग. अब इन्हीं तरीकों को समझाने के लिए once again Bhagwan is reiterating everything for Arjun. Why? Because we also, like Arjun, we forget. हाँ सुना था, but वो तो किताबी knowledge थी ना, हमारे जिंदगी में तो उसको उतारा नहीं, हमारे जहन में भी नहीं उतरा. So so knowledge is not something which we can gain as word knowledge, कि मुझे शब्द पता चल गया, नहीं, पर उसका सार, where is the jnana coming from it, that hasn't come in. So anyway, chapter 12, once again Bhagwan says, look, you are looking for a way out from this sansar and the dukha of sansar, and that is what is stopping you. He has mentioned in the 12th chapter, 5th verse, क्लेशोधिकतरस्तेषाम. ये क्लेश जो है ना, ये 4 तरीकों से ही आया है. अज्ञान, because you don't know your real nature, and उस अज्ञान से आता है अस्मिता. I'm just revising. अज्ञान and अस्मिता. अस्मिता means मैं ये हूँ, मैं वो हूँ, and there is an attachment to my false identities of this संसार. मैं इस संसार में मैं जो भी करता हूँ उसे आइडेंटिटी जुड़ती जाती है, और उस अस्मिता I am this or that से दुनिया में we react to everything with either राग or द्वेष. And also fear comes from that, because fear of loss of loved ones, fear of loss of our own life, fear of loss of wealth or friends, loss of anything that we value actually. And what do we value? We value only the worldly things. We value only putra and pautra. Pautra means grandchildren, and of course the wealth for which we have worked really hard, and relationships and near and dear ones because they look after us, all that. So the attachment is what is causing us the sorrow, and all that is causing us fear. कि जब वो नहीं खोया है तो उसके खोने की आशंका से मुझे fear वैसे भी ग्रस्त रखता है. So I am already dwelling in anxiety and fear, even though I may not have lost all these things. But these things are meant to go. They are meant to be lost. They are meant to deplete. That's the nature of law. What is it that can never deplete, can never be lost? Why don't you hang on to that? That is the whole purpose. So that consciousness is what can never be lost, and that is with you always. So क्लेश इसलिए हो रहा है कि आप जो भीतर रह रहे हैं, भीतर ही रहिए, क्योंकि संसार में जो जड़ वस्तुएं हैं, whatever it is, relationships and people and वस्तु and व्यक्ति and परिस्थिति, all this is जड़, it's outside. ओह अच्छा, तो फिर मैं और वो जुड़ते कैसे हैं? What is the link? There is only one link. मैं भीतर हूँ और भीतर रहना नहीं जानता हूँ. I link myself with all the जड़ वस्तु of the world because I use राग और द्वेष, my attachment to those things or my aversion to those things, as the only and only link between my inside, which is quiet and still as a pool in a cave. If you can ever imagine, or if you have seen, there is not a not a drop of, no, drop नहीं कहते, not a shade of wind, not a whiff of wind in the cave. So वो the surface of the water in a pond, in a cave, is as still as glass. हमारा जो अंतर्मन है ना, अंतःकरण, if we were not to interact with the wind or with the storms of the world, it would be as still and as quiet as a lake inside, deep inside a cave. लेकिन हम अपना अंतर्मन और बाहर के बीच में एक लिंक जोड़े रहते हैं और वो लिंक छोड़ते नहीं हैं, इसलिए वो लिंक causes all the trouble, क्लेशो भी. What is that link? Rag and Dvesh. The only link you have, we all have a choice. Break the link, छोड़ो, and vairagya कर लो. That means just detach yourself mentally, and you are back into that peaceful cave of your own man, which is our heritage, which is who we are. That consciousness never leaves us. That pool will always be still and quiet deep within. The only link, Rag Dvesh, we are holding it and holding tight to it, and so the problem is ours. It is not Bhagwan's. But Bhagwan is still compassionate, and he says, okay. So what was the first step to still the mind? To still the mind, the first step is, in the third verse, he had said, Avyaktam paryupasate. Why don't you keep your mind on that infinite, eternal, avyakta, unmanifest consciousness? Acha, but that's too tough. Then he said, okay, in the fourth verse, Sanniyamyendriya gramam. That means you can restrain your wandering mind and be samabuddhayaha, be even-minded. Acha, so I have to be even-minded, I have to be samabuddhayaha, otherwise I cannot even rest my mind on that infinite. And you know what the trouble is? Krishna realizes that even this is not possible, to restrain your senses, the wandering mind, and keep it still. So he says, okay Arjun, don't worry. Don't worry. What I am going to do is give you another path, because we are still looking for a way for you to break your link between your deep inside man, the bhitar man, where you can rest, and the outside world, the storm of the outside world. That raga dvesha link, I will help you. How? Okay, so in the fourth verse he says, Sarva bhuta hite rataha. Why don't you just start working for the benefit, for the welfare, for the happiness of someone else or for some others? Just do that. So we may, in the beginning, we may do it mechanically. You know, Krishna ne kaha hai, Gita mein kaha hai, chalo karte hain. It's okay. It's okay. We can even start mechanically. But it will change the quality of the mind. It will change the texture of the mind over and over again when we do it, because after some time we will stop centering our mind on I, me, myself, main or mera, because that is what is causing the klesha. So he says simply, okay, I'll give you a simple method. Sarva bhuta hite rataha, work for the benefit of others. Now, even that, if we try, you know, it may sound very simple, but if we try, it's also tough. Because we have been conditioned, and also because when we evolve, we are designed to protect ourselves. That means self-protection seems to be an instinct in us and in all animals actually. तो हम अपना हित तो पहले देखेंगे ना. हाँ, ठीक है. So it's an instinctive self-survival which prompts us to keep looking only for our own hit, for our own benefit, our own loss and our own, not loss, our own gain. Now, Bhagwan says, you will loosen that hold. I know it's natural. You will loosen that hold on that old, very old mind, which is a very primitive, instinctive mind, which says, no, your survival is most important. ठीक है, वो primitive mind है. It belongs to the caveman days when we needed to protect ourselves all the time from the wild and from people. So I'm not going to comment on the corporate world where we still need self-protection from the corporate monsters. Yes, but it is an instinct for survival. But even in this kind of world, Bhagwan says, I promise you I will look after you. I am going to Samuddharta. I am going to be your savior. Just at least try it. Try it. Loosen your hold on my benefit and my happiness and my welfare all the time. And he says, I promise you, Sarva Bhuta Hite, start working for others. Again, a tough call because this means that I have to start thinking about others. Yes, it's a practice. Like any other practice, swimming or driving. It's a practice. And the mind changes. So Bhagwan says, okay, that simply means that is a form of, if you feel it's very hard for you to, just offer everything that you have to others, do one thing. Pretend that you are doing all the work just for me. At least you have some regard for me, that is Krishna or Bhagwan or the ultimate reality, जो भी कहते हैं. दूसरों के लिए इतना regard नहीं है, इतनी श्रद्धा नहीं है. मेरे में श्रद्धा है ना तुम्हारे पास, तो तुम मुझे ही अर्पण कर दो वो काम. I still promise you the texture of your mind will change. How? What kind of work? All kinds of work. जो हम अपने देह निर्वाह के लिए काम करते हैं, our daily routine, or we do work for our vocations and professions, or we do any धर्म का काम, संसारी काम या धर्म का काम. भगवान कह रहे हैं कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, जो भी कर्म है, सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत पराहा, मुझको तुम अर्पण करते हुए चलो तो कम से कम उस श्रद्धा को होल्ड ऑन करोगे. What is he trying to do? He is trying to loosen our grip, and it's like a vice, a vice-like grip with which we are holding on to our rag and dvesha, our connection with the world, कि ये मेरा है, ये मेरा नहीं है. राग एंड द्वेष का ग्रिप भगवान बहुत तरीकों से ट्राई कर रहे हैं. Why? Because this is not the spiritual goal, but this is a method. This is a method to reach that spiritual goal. और हर तरह के temperaments होते हैं, हर तरह के capacities होती हैं, हर तरह की श्रद्धा होती है. तो इसलिए इतने सारे methods दिए गए हैं कि मैं किस तरह का method अपनाऊं, that depends on us. Therefore, in Sanatana Dharma, you will never find injunctions and doctrines. You have to do it. No dogma, no doctrines. You have to do this, you have to do that, or you will burn in hell. No. There is always a logic and a compassionate guidance and methods and ways given to wriggle out of this mesh of sansar, and the choice is still left to the jiva, to the insan, the individual, to say, bhai, ab tumhare upar hai. So the spiritual effort is left to us, the high regard which is given to the seeker in Sanatana Dharma. And therefore, no dogma, no doctrine, no injunctions. He says, choose your path according to your temperament and shraddha and also your shakti. आपको जिस चीज में मन लगता है. शक्ति क्यों? क्योंकि जो मेथड बता रहे हैं अगला, उन्होंने 6th verse में बोला था, ध्यायन्त उपासते. आप ध्यान करो. ध्यान तो 2 तरीके से हो सकता है. हम इष्ट देवता पर भी कर सकते हैं, मतलब आइडल पर, आइडल या मूर्ति पर, मूर्ति पूजन भी कर सकते हैं, या इनफाइनाइट अव्यक्त पर भी. दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन यू, डिपेंड्स ऑन द कैपेसिटी. ध्यान करो. तो हम जो इस संसार के सागर में डूबे हुए हैं ना, ध्यान इज अ ग्रेट डिसिप्लिन. दूसरों के लिए कर्म करते जाना, उनके हित के लिए, सर्वभूत हिते रताहा, ये भी एक डिसिप्लिन है. हम हर डिसिप्लिन को सोचते हैं नहीं इससे इजी कोई पाथ है क्या. भगवान कहते हैं डोंट वरी, आई विल गिव यू मोर एंड मोर पाथ, यू चूज इट. एंड देन मृत्यु संसार सागरात समुद्धरता. 7th verse में वो बोले थे, आई विल बी योर सेवियर एंड हेल्प यू क्रॉस दिस संसार. बिकॉज the answer to crossing the sansar, वो संसार में तो मिलेगा नहीं. I have to give it to you as a spiritual knowledge only. बाहर से ही आंसर आता है ना, क्योंकि जब हम नाव में बैठे हैं तो उसका जो oars होते हैं, oars, चप्पू, they are outside of the water and then they move the boat forward. So in the ocean itself I can't find the answer if I am drowning. हम संसार में इसका उत्तर नहीं ढूंढ पाते हैं. So he says, okay, what you can do is set your mind on me. Still your mind and set it on me. In the 7th verse, in the same 7th verse, he says, Maya veshita chetasam. आपकी चेतना, आपका कॉन्शियसनेस, आपका ध्यान कहाँ है दिन भर? दिन भर ध्यान इसमें उसमें, व्यक्ति, वस्तु, परिस्थिति, या फिर पास्ट, अभी कुछ इवेंट नहीं हो रहा है तो पिछले इवेंट्स में जाता रहता है. बट द पास्ट इज ओवर, गॉन, डेड, that will never return. It makes no sense to dwell for too long churning the past. And it makes no sense to have anxiety of the future. In any case, we know the logic. हम कितनी बार इस बात को सुन सके हैं, इसी गीता यज्ञ में बार बार सुनते हैं, कहते हैं, लेकिन our mind has a way of slipping back. Because of years of conditioning, it has a way of slipping back. And therefore, Bhagavan says, what you can do now is, एक काम करते हैं. And then he goes to verse number 9. 12th chapter, verse number 9. So many ways, so many paths. अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरं. न शक्नोषि यानी कि तुम अशक्य हो, यानी असमर्थ हो. Not possible for you. मयि स्थिरम, to be steady in me, in the thought of me. मतलब कृष्णा या भगवान, तुम मन नहीं बांध सकते हो. अथ चित्तं समाधातुं, to fix your mind on me. Okay. Then अभ्यास योगेन ततः, by constant practice. Now there is nothing that can come without practice. तो आपको अभ्यास तो करना ही पड़ेगा. अभ्यास योगेन ततः मामिच्छाप्तुं धनंजय. If you are seeking me, practice seeks to reach me. That is the highest truth. अभी न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम, स्थिर यानी steady, मयि माने भगवान में मन लगाना. अरे भगवान में मन लगाना तो दूर रहा, हम, it's tragic enough that the mind is always wandering. As if that tragedy was not enough, the mind is not only constantly wandering, but it is also abducted. Means it's pulled in directions of strong raga and strong dvesha, strong attractions and revulsions, and also strong distractions. Distractions हमारे वही होते हैं जहाँ राग और द्वेष हो, वरना नहीं होते. So by abhyasa here, in the second line, first word by abhyasa, Bhagwan probably means learn with practice and with determination to stand apart from such a mind. What kind of mind? Which is foolish enough to keep wandering all the time. Fix it on me. Now me here, he has made it even more simple, and he says, okay, I am not even talking about nirgun upasana. Nirgun upasana yani mind on the unmanifest infinite. अरे मुझे तो I cannot put my mind on what can I put my mind? तो वो कहते हैं इष्ट देवता भी आप चुन सकते हैं. There are so many gods. इष्ट देवता चुन लो. राम है, कृष्ण है, जीसस है, बुद्ध है. You have the Kaaba stone, you have the 5-pointed star, you have Mahavir. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What really matters is कि उस समय जब हम अभ्यास करते हैं, और अभ्यास का definition again we have to turn once again इस definition के लिए to अष्टांग योग में महर्षि पतंजलि, उनका definition बहुत अच्छा है. अभ्यास का मतलब वो चीज जो हम, कोई भी चीज हो जो हम दीर्घ काल के लिए करते हैं. उसमें 3 चीजें जरूरी हैं अभ्यास के लिए. दीर्घ काल, it has to be consistent and done for a long time. तो हम कभी कभी कहते हैं, yes I know I did a course for 3 months, I heard the Gita once over. हाँ, कई लोगों ने पढ़ी है और कई बार 3 महीने में पढ़ी है, लेकिन हर बार it drives deeper, क्योंकि every time we are listening to the scriptures, it is not a knowledge based listening. Knowledge based meaning knowledge तो बार बार वही बता रहे हैं, एक ही है ज्ञान, तत्वमसि, consciousness is one and प्रकृति is false. तो ये तो एक लाइन का नॉलेज हुआ, तो इसमें क्यों इतने साल लगाते हैं हम? Yes, so learning the scriptures is दीर्घ काल, consistent and for a long time, because every time we listen there is a mananam or a chintanam, that is contemplation on our own life and quality of our own mind. So that every time we put our mind on studying itself, कि अरे कहाँ भागा जा रहा है, it becomes more and more restrained. दीर्घ काल. दूसरा बात, नैरंतर्यम, consistently. अभी किया, बाद में नहीं किया, then there are breaks and then there are some more breaks and then okay I've lost the link. कि अच्छा वो क्या कह रहे थे कृष्ण, पता नहीं। और अच्छा उपनिषद में, कठोपनिषद में नचिकेत ने एक प्रश्न पूछा था, फिर उसके बाद मैं कहीं चला गया, आई रियली लॉस्ट द थ्रेड ऑफ इट। सो कंसिस्टेंसी के बिना आप समझिए, आई एम नॉट ओनली स्पीकिंग ऑफ द स्क्रिप्चर्स, दिस इज अ वेरी सेक्युलर डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ एनी अभ्यास. The abhyas of playing tennis, let's say I want to be an Olympic tennis player, I cannot afford to be inconsistent. So narantariniyam, I have to be consistent, I have to do it for a long period of time, dirgha kalam. If I wanted to be a great dancer, I should have started dancing at the age of 5, and if I start now, okay, so I'm going to develop certain tendencies and vasanas about dance, and then that will carry on in next life. But I have to start somewhere, but it has to go on for dirgha kal. And the last part of abhyas, most important, that when we put our mind on any abhyas, scriptural or secular, it has to be satkara sevitah. Satkara means you have to have a great reverence for it. Without reverence, it just becomes a dry piece of scholarly knowledge. कि अच्छा हाँ, now I am a scholar of Buddhism because I know the tenets of Buddhism, I know the life of Buddha, etc., etc. Okay, so having said that, dirgha kal. So this is the definition of abhyas. Dirgha kal, nairantariniyam, satkara sevitah. Can the mind stand apart? Is Bhagwan is saying, na shaknoshi mayi sthiram. Your mind cannot stand apart and be sthir. So why don't you just take to Ishta Devta and do Sagun Upasana. See, now we have finally come to Sagun Upasana. Sagun yani, yes, God has a name, it has a form, He has a form, he or she or it, whatever. There is a form, there is a shape, there are qualities, there are attributes. He is compassionate or strong or whatever. So we give attributes, and then what happens is, then when we listen to the Leela, when we listen to Upanishads, we listen to the Leelas of Bhagwan. Leela yani all the stories of Bhagwan. And then what happens to the mind? The mind has stopped wandering out into the world. What is a carpenter doing? Whether my car is functioning well, or whether my child has taken admission, when is the next promotion for my grandchild. The mind has now started wandering. Yes, it will still wander because our minds have not yet developed the high discipline. Okay, let it wander. But now let the mind wander in the Leelas of Bhagwan. See what a sweet way Krishna has suggested कि एक काम तो कर सकते हो ना, अपना wandering mind लेकर wander करो by listening to lots and lots of stories of Bhagwan through Puranas and also by reading a lot about the reading the biographies of Mahatmas and how they led their lives and how they struggled with their spirituality, everything. Then your mind wanders. Yes, it wanders, but in the higher things. So Bhagwan ki Leela mein wander karo. Another way he has given. He is making it simpler and simpler for us. Now what happens then? That the mind then, once there is a great reverence for that Ishta Devata, the mind also learns to surrender. See, a rational mind is always looking for, I want to know this, I want to know the answer to that. It is not always ready to surrender so easily. We are going to look at the difference between Sagun Upasana and Nirgun Upasana. हमारे मन में क्या द्वंद्व चलता है, लेकिन इन दोनों को समझने के लिए पहले हम सगुण उपासना पूरी तरह समझें. सगुण यानी वर्शिप ऑफ एन आइडल, मूर्ति पूजा, मूर्ति पूजन. Yes, it is there in Gita, so it is not completely disqualified, but we have to see how it is to be practiced. Why Ishta Devata? क्योंकि हमारा माइंड अभी इतना सटल नहीं हुआ है. It hasn't become subtle enough for it to remain steady on the nirgun, on the unmanifest. इतनी subtlety नहीं आई है. So that's why सगुण उपासना है. Now I'm sure we are wondering whether there are disadvantages of Murti Pujan. Yes, anything taken to the extreme, it has certain disadvantages. So, before even understanding Murti Pujan का जो downfall है, how does Murti Puja help? एक बात तो बता दी कि yes, it helps to hold the mind. कि हमारे सामने हमारे इष्ट है. इष्ट यानी I've learned to love that figure or that God or that Bhagwan, whatever attributes have been told about that Bhagwan, I just love. There is a satkar sevita. मेरे मन में इतना reverence है. Now the quality of mind is already changed from seeking in the world to reverence. So there is a subtlety. Now the deity is like a mirror. And what are we? We are stool outside, but we are basically consciousness. So when we are approaching a deity or a murti, and remember the murti is only a stool matter. The stool matter outside will by itself will not have any power. But yes, because we are conscious beings and we project that consciousness onto the murti, we are actually invoking our power of the infinite and of eternal consciousness onto the murti. Do you see what is happening? We don't realize it because or maybe because we don't do it too often, but you will realize it when we go to a temple or a mosque or a very old church or to the Kaaba stone in Mecca, Medina, or to Kedarnath or to Siddhivinayak. What is it? We notice that there is a certain vibration. Why? Because so many thousands of people have crossed that altar, and each time, hopefully, they have become more and more subtle. They've come with a mind which is non-sansari. That's why they've come to the mosque. अगर संसार में मन लगाना होता तो हम मॉस्क में, मंदिर में या चर्च में आके बैठते क्यों? हम 5 मिनट आए, 5 मिनट वहाँ बैठे, मन को we emptied our mind, and that when you empty the mind, that is the avaran, that is the covering of all this noisy mind of ours, what remains? Just below all this noise, there is only pure consciousness which is pulsating in all of us. That pulsating consciousness causes a vibration, projects its vibration, invokes our own power from that image, whatever the image or the murti or the stool vastu, and over a period of time, that place has a vibrational energy of so many thousands of people. And we had given the example of the collective energy in a cricket stadium. आप क्रिकेट स्टेडियम में अगर मैच देख रहे हैं और घर में टीवी पर देख रहे हैं, वही बात नहीं होगी. In the cricket stadium there is a palpable, strong cricket energy, क्योंकि हर इंसान वहाँ, I think 4 lakh people हो सकते हैं, 4 lakh people, each one of them is exuding cricket energy. Through the sound, through words, through the mind, they are exuding cricket energy, and it is so strong that you cannot help but be carried over the waves and of the cricket energy. अगर क्रिकेट में हो सकती है, फुटबॉल में हो सकती है, तो क्या हम अपनी spiritual energy project नहीं करते? Collective energy, yes, we do, because we have that power, and therefore that collective energy is now sort of centered in all these places of worship. And therefore अगर कोई भी agnostic आएगा और कहेगा क्या आप मूर्ति पूजन में विश्वास करती है? मूर्ति में क्या रखा है? तो मार्बल, पीस ऑफ मार्बल है, 50 साल पहले वो किसी पहाड़ी का पत्थर था, किसी ने उसको हथौड़े से मार के and then somebody chiseled it out. So yes, I understand. We of the rational mind can understand what they are saying, and yet we have to have the subtlety of mind to understand what Krishna is trying to say. He is saying whatever you project your energy of reverence and respect and pure consciousness on, that energy will be reflected back at you. And this has been proved by science. Now the science wants to test it out. So the stone, so most of these structures are made of stone, and they notice that that vibrational energy deflects back at us in altars, in temples, in churches and places of worship. Okay, that's why we need an altar. Okay, that so a simple mind may ask, so should I go to a temple or a mosque or a gurudwara or where? How does it matter? Ekam Sat, Ekam Sat. Sat is only one. Consciousness is one. Bhagwan is one. Ekam Satve Praha Bahudha Vadanti. Bahudha Vadanti यानी बहुत तरीके हैं उनको व्यक्त करने के लिए. So many masters and so many peer and paigambars have come on this planet, and they have talked about the same consciousness, same Bhagwan, but in different ways. So Muhammad may express it differently, Mahavir may say it differently, but they are talking of the same truth. And Tao, take kings, Tao may express it differently. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahudha Vadanti. That consciousness which pulsates in everyone is the same in us. And also it's eternal. It's infinite. It actually does not fall with the fall of this body, this small little Nashwar body which is subject to disease and decay and disintegration. That consciousness of mine is not subject to disease and decay and disintegration. It remains constant. So in the power of that light, if we can focus our minds, then how we can never fall prey to bhaya, that is fear, which comes from raga dvesha, which comes from asmita, I am this or that, which comes from avidya. So the whole ladder is now clear to us. So with that, we have to mention the dangers of idol worship. There have been places, many cases, if we are not careful, even idol worship, murti pujan can become spiritual stagnation, complete stagnation. Kyun? Kyunki we are caught up in the form, in the adornment of the form, in the sage and sajja of the form, in the same bhajan and pujan every day, mechanically sounded words every day, and not keeping our mind on the final truth. So we can stagnate and miss the substance and focus only on the form. यानी कि मैंने form देखा, substance नहीं देखा, and then I might miss my spiritual journey completely, even though I may have gone to the temple every Sunday or every Friday or whatever frequency you may like. It doesn't matter. It's like a mind which hasn't grown subtle enough and gets stuck and caught up in pure ritualism and mechanical idolation can become stagnant, and it's like a child giving, not a child who grows up, and we all grow up, and as we grow up we keep giving the same class 5 exam over and over again. So does it sound ridiculous? Yeah, it is ridiculous that I may give the same class 5 exam over and over again for so many years. क्योंकि हम पूजा करते 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 हमारा माइंड तो सेटल हुआ नहीं. In fact, because of puja, idol worship, what has happened, I may have created conflict and division, मेरे भगवान और आपके भगवान within the same religion. अब दूसरे religion की बात छोड़ ही दीजिए. Within the same religion there will be divisions and conflict and pride and separatism and excessive emotionalism. क्या है ये सब? It's madness. We have to guard ourselves and not take the words of the scriptures literally, and therefore a rational mind with a mind filled with reverence is the perfect combination which Bhagwan is looking for. He has mentioned that in one of the verses, I think the 8th verse, where he says, Mayeva mana adhastva, man bhi mujhe chahiye aur mayi buddhim niveshaya. 8th verse. Man and buddhi both. You don't get carried away by one or the other. So excessive ritualism, we have guarded ourselves. Okay, so I need not labor this point too far. But let me mention a small story of Ramakrishna Paramhans. You know that Ramakrishna was the caretaker originally of a Kali temple in Bengal, and he looked after Kali, and he just stayed in the temple to the extent that he was in love with Kali Ma, and he would treat her like his own Ma, and he had begun to even talk to her, and people thought he's mad, blabbering in his delirium. But his bhakti had reached that level, let's put it that way. And so Ramakrishna had personified Bhagwan as Ma. You can take any form of, like it can be a Bal Gopal Krishna or Ram or Hanumanji, depends on our temperament. That's why they say, aap apne ishta devta chun lo. Anyway, so Ramakrishna in Kali temple, in Bhagwan personified, and his emotionalism and his bhakti was so great that sometimes even without food, even without bathing, he would be okay by just being in her company, Kali Ma temple. Now, there was this rishi kahenge, Sant Totapuri. Sant Totapuri was a Jnani, and he said that आप पूरी तरह भक्त हैं, लेकिन आपको ज्ञान भी होना चाहिए. Ramakrishna said, what Gyan? I am happy, I have reached God, I am fine with Bhagwan. So Totapuri said, okay, ये बाप के भगवान है, ये मूर्ति है, तो एक काम करो. The next time that you see her, because Ramakrishna used to say, मुझे वो स्वयं आके बात करती हैं, वो मुझसे सामने दिखती हैं, not as मूर्ति but as a personific, as a person. Totapuri said, okay, this is a real story, and we find it in many episodes that are there, also filmed episodes. Totapuri said, okay, next time when you see her form appear before you, as you mentioned, you take a knife and you strike at her heart. Ramakrishna was aghast, but he said कि आपने संत ने बोला है तो मुझे करना पड़ेगा. And the next time Kali Ma appeared as a person, तो रामकृष्ण इतना ध्यान करते थे, वो कहते थे सामने आ जाती है मेरे. उनके सामने जब वो आई, he said, yes, I will do the bidding, and he took a knife, and as he struck at her heart, he fell into a deep samadhi. Samadhi is not that he was sleeping or he was dreaming. He was fully awake. The state of samadhi is called turiya state. It is not swapna, it is not jagrit, it is not swapna, jagrit and deep sleep. What is a deep sleep word? Okay, anyway, it is none of these. It is the fourth state of turiya. He fell into a deep samadhi, fully awake, fully conscious and samadhi. And this Jnani Totapuri said, it took me 40 years of abhyasa and practice to get into a samadhi state, like this kind of samadhi. Deep, deep meditation, which Ramakrishna has attained within a few minutes, this samadhi. That means both Totapuri and Ramakrishna both had a high regard for each other. One was a total Murti Puja person, Ramakrishna, total Murti, Ma, all that he could think about was Ma, and also semi-literate. And Totapuri was a Jnani. Now, both had high regard for each other, but both of them now realized how important both Bhakti and Gyan is. So now how did Ramakrishna next time, from here onward, how did he view Ma Kali? He viewed her, of course, he was so much in love with her, he viewed her as Ma Kali, but this time onwards, he saw her as the likeness of his own consciousness, which is the ultimate truth anyway, isn't it? वो भक्ति के द्वारा वही truth पर पहुंच गए, that Paramatma is a likeness, I am the likeness actually of that Paramatma. So he considered his own consciousness, that limitless ocean of consciousness which he saw in Ma, and his own, it became the same. Gyan reaches the same point, remember, Gyan reaches the same point, that Paramatma and Atma is the same. But one reaches through Gyan, the other through Bhakti. So idol worship has a place in life, we must remember. First of all, it restrains our senses. You know, our biggest issue, and Bhagwan has mentioned it over and over again, is Sanniyam Yendriya Gramam in the 4th verse. अपने इंद्रियों को तो काबू करो, तो मूर्ति पूजन से कैसे काबू होगी? Yes, because our senses of ras, gandha, sparshas, sense of taste and sight and sound is satisfied at the altar. At least when we are at the altar, there is the incense and there is the sound of mantras, and there is this beauty that we fill ourselves with, the beauty of the image, whatever your Ishta Devata. And so our sight and sound and taste and the lovely flowers, all our senses are replete with that beauty. At least now they have stopped wandering out and chasing out into the world. ऐसे ही समझ लो that it is a substitute for your indriya. So the flowers, the patra, the pushpa, the mantra, the sound of the bells and the murti, remember, they all are an anchor to hold on, the anchor for the indriyas to hold on and stop wandering out. Because we are of a rational bent of mind, we are taking this route of explanation. Otherwise, the bhakta would say, why do you even need to explain? I go to my altar and I am in samadhi. I've just detached myself from this noisy sansar. और मैं खुश हूँ, मैं संतुष्ट हूँ, and I have this beautiful sense of seclusion with my God. भक्त बोलते हैं हमको वही काफी है. Yes, that's also true, and that's for the bhakta. अगर हम भक्त हैं, वाह क्या बात है. If we are looking for logic and rationale, then yes, then we know how the mind and indriyas are being centered and focused through murti puja. But we still need the discipline of remembering that the murti stands for the ultimate truth, for that consciousness, and it is that discipline of mind is needed. So what we have seen today is that we use the murti for invoking the divinity. We invoke divinity, and sometimes what we do is we use the murti pujan even to look for, or to, let's say, beg for more benefits from the sansar. The entire purpose is defeated. संसार से अलग होने के लिए, to put my mind apart from संसार, I go to my altar or मूर्ति or my ध्यान or my karma yoga, whatever, many methods are there, to take my mind away. और वो उसका purpose हम बना देते हैं कि भगवान मुझे ये करा दो, वो करा दो, इतना करा दो, and then back to संसार. We have to guard ourselves from getting caught in this loop, in this whole loop of संसार से भागे फिर संसार में फंसे. But many people we know in our own community who do that. In all compassion, we have to understand that the discipline of murti puja and of bhakti has to be compassionately explained to many of the people. So if we are mechanically lighting the lamps, mechanically offering the laddus, mechanically doing our pranayam, this abhyas may not lead to that kind of subtlety, that sukshma, that sensitivity, which is required to escape from the sansari engagement, involvement with the stool things. So even a normal bhakta would say, yeah, you can talk to your deity. You can, yes, Ramakrishna used to do that. इतनी आस्था होना चाहिए ना. तो अगर श्रद्धा हो या श्रद्धा जगाना चाहते हैं, तो we can start with our murti. But we know the purpose. The purpose is rein in the mind, rein in the senses, and try and find a focus which is higher than the sthula vastu and the I, me, mine, selfish, desire-seeking, pleasure-seeking mindset. To get away from such a mind. Karma Yoga, of course, is the most beautiful, which again Bhagwan is going to come to. And in verse number 10, he is going to say that even when you cannot work for the happiness and benefit of others, then do this thing. Number 10. अभ्यासेत्य समर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि कुर्वन्नसि द्विमवाप्स्यसि कुर्वन्सि द्विमवाप्स्यसि. Okay, so if you are unable to practice the Abhyas Yoga, which I have talked about, now Abhyas Yoga here actually stands for the Abhyas of the ritualistic Murti Pujan, because it is a outer practice. Because your intent on performing those actions are for my sake. What you can do is, it's not for your sake, but think that it is just for my sake and not for gaining some benefits from me. You will attain perfection if you slowly start offering not only your ritualism and your puja and your pilgrimage and your upasana. Offer it for me, but also your secular activities. Just do it as if mat karma paramo bhava. Perform it for my sake. This is first level of karma yoga. First level of karma yoga is कि जो भी तुम करते हो ना, उसको तुम निष्काम कर लो, कि मैं अपने कामना के लिए नहीं कर रहा हूँ, ये निष्काम है. It is for you, Bhagwan, it's for you. First level. You know why first level? Because there is an even more easier level coming, because we find it very hard to say कि अरे ये मेरे लिए नहीं है, मैं ये कर्म अपने लिए तो कर रहा हूँ. सकाम कर्म हो जाता है, सकाम कर्म, because we do everything for acquiring some benefit. तो मैं भगवान को कैसे अर्पण कर दूँ अपना सब, कि ये आपके लिए है, ये आपके लिए, you are my boss. Some people are able to do it, of course. It requires a high level of surrender and a high level of bhakti and a high level of vairagya. Of course they can do it. But we are not in that category of very high level of vairagya, detachment from the world, and bhakti and reverence. And therefore Bhagwan will give two ways to perform karma yoga. One, of course, is in the 10th verse, which says just perform it as if you're doing it for me. If not, one more way is offered in the next verse. That we will see next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shyate. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. हरिः ओम् उच्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः 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 हरिः ओम् उच्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः